So this is the iPhone 12, Apple's 2020 release that I said was probably going to be one of the best value iPhones for 2021. However, this is the iPhone 11 Pro, Apple's flagship phone from the year before, so seeing as both are round about the same price nowadays, which should you get in 2021? Let's find out. First of all, as always, we're going to be taking a look at the specs. The iPhone 11 Pro is rocking an Apple A13 Bionic processor, whereas the iPhone 12 is actually rocking that new Apple A14 processor, and we're going to be talking more about what this means in terms of performance later on. Both phones also feature 4GB of RAM and a variety of internal storage options. The iPhone 11 Pro has either 64, 256, or 512GB of internal storage, whereas the iPhone 12 has 64, 128, or 256GB. Now, if you guys know me, then you'll know I don't keep a lot of apps on my phone, so I always go for the 64GB variant. However, here I will actually say for most people, I do think the storage options on the iPhone 12 are actually better. What I mean by this is I think more people are going to have a use for that 128GB version than the mentioned 512GB version, and the fact that the 11 Pro lacks that 128GB storage option, being that it's such a useful capacity, is a little bit disappointing. In terms of weight, the iPhone 11 Pro weighs in at 188 grams, whereas the iPhone 12 weighs in at a slightly lighter 162 grams, despite being the slightly larger phone. As for key specs, that's pretty much it. Both phones are pretty similar in this regard, with some slight incremental upgrades such as that processor. But as we know by now, where iPhones tend to really shine is with the software side of things. So we're going to be taking a look at that in a bit. But first of all, what about the build quality? Well, here we actually do start to see some pretty big differences between these two phones. In terms of design, the iPhone 11 Pro went with the classic notched iPhone design, the only real exception being the obvious 3 cameras. Also, the incredible frosted back that I personally love, and for that reason alone, the iPhone 11 Pro is, at least in my opinion, the better looking of these two phones. Whereas with the design side of things, the iPhone 12 sort of returned to a classic shape, bringing back that almost iPhone 4S squared off bezel shape that people really wanted, myself included. And I was really enjoying using the iPhone 12 as my daily driver. The new shape did mean that despite the bigger size, I was able to comfortably hold this phone, something I haven't been able to do on larger phones ever. The bezel itself is made of aluminium, whereas on the iPhone 11 Pro, it's made of stainless steel, which does feel a little bit more premium. Both phones do feature a glass back, but on the iPhone 12, Apple actually introduced their ceramic shield technology, essentially meaning that it's more durable. At least according to the spec sheet, the iPhone 11 Pro does feature Gorilla Glass on both the front and the back. From researching the two, it does seem that the ceramic shield technology does outperform it slightly. However, as always, I would recommend keeping a case on both, because if you end up dropping your phone and smashing it, that is going to be a very unpleasant repair bill. Another area where the iPhone 12 takes a lead is with the water resistance. Both phones feature an IP68 water resistance rating. However, the iPhone 11 Pro is protected up to 4 meters for 30 minutes, whereas the iPhone 12 is actually protected, at least according to the spec sheet, for up to 6 meters, which is a nice improvement. Now, as always, I wouldn't recommend getting your phone wet if you can avoid it, but it is a nice failsafe nonetheless. Overall, it is pretty clear that the iPhone 12 is the winner here, and despite me personally preferring the design of the iPhone 11 Pro, because of that added durability, I do have to give this round to the iPhone 12. Moving on, we have the screen, and here the iPhone 12 actually got a pretty significant upgrade from the previous iPhone 11 in this department. However, how does it compare to the previous flagship? Well, the iPhone 12 has a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED panel with a resolution of 1170 by 2532, a typical brightness of 625 nits. It also features Dolby Vision, and despite having a lower typical brightness, due to the fact that it's HDR10 certified, in this mode, it will reach a peak brightness of 1200 nits. The iPhone 11 Pro is rocking a 5.8-inch Super XDR OLED HDR10 Dolby certified display with a resolution of 1125 by 2436, a typical brightness of 800 nits, and a peak brightness of 1200 nits. Both phones also feature True Tone, which essentially means that whatever lighting environment you're in, your colors will look well balanced. Both also feature haptic touch as the secondary interaction method, which is good. And overall, it is clear that the iPhone 12 does slightly pull ahead here. And while I do personally still prefer the size of the iPhone 11 Pro, if you do like a larger screen, then the iPhone 12 is kind of the obvious choice here. In terms of button layout, while they are very similar in a lot of ways, there is actually some differences that might not be immediately obvious. Both feature separate volume buttons, a nice big isolated lock button, and a mute switch. On the surface, they look almost identical. However, there is a pretty big difference. In terms of tactility, the iPhone 12 is significantly better than on the iPhone 11 Pro. Now, I have actually found this to be the case with almost all aluminum bezel iPhones, but it is pretty obvious here that the buttons on the iPhone 12 feel much clickier. Now, this isn't to say that the buttons on the iPhone 11 Pro are bad necessarily. However, there is a pretty noticeable difference, leading to more of those accidental screenshots that were a thing of the past when I was on the iPhone 12. Regardless though, nothing's changed really in terms of button layout. Both feel well thought out, both are tactile enough, and overall, I'd be fine with each. After this, we have the main unlock method for these phones, which just so happens to be Face ID. The iPhone 11 Pro got a huge boost in both performance and accuracy from the previous iPhone XS, and now, as long as you keep your phone on your leg or a table, you can unlock your phone from pretty much any angle as long as you're looking at it. And that was a welcome upgrade. To be totally honest, nothing has really changed, at least in my experience from the iPhone 11 Pro to the iPhone 12, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. And while I would have liked an improvement on the iPhone 12 side of things, maybe a second biometrics method, like that lock button on the iPad Air, that was awesome. All in all though, both are fast to unlock and both are very usable. Next up, we're going to talk about the camera, and as this is a pretty long section usually, I'm going to summarize it right here. If you want to take casual photos, don't really care about getting as many angles as possible, and want the versatility of having night mode on all cameras, then the iPhone 12 is pretty much the clear choice here. However, if you want more versatility, a telephoto lens, and don't mind sacrificing the ultra-wide and selfie night mode, then I personally do still prefer the iPhone 11 Pro. Anyway, now let's talk about the cameras. The iPhone 12 features a dual camera system with a 12 megapixel f1.6 wide-angle camera and another 12 megapixel f2.4 ultra-wide camera. The iPhone 11 Pro, on the other hand, has 3 cameras, all of which feature a resolution of 12 megapixels, with the wide having an aperture of f1.8, the telephoto having an aperture of f2, and the ultra-wide having an aperture of f2.4. The selfie camera seems to look about the same on both, with a 12 megapixel f2.2 front-facing camera. However, once again, you do get night mode on the iPhone 12, whereas on the iPhone 11 Pro, that is nowhere to be seen. In terms of performance, I found both to look pretty excellent. In fact, I did a full video comparing both of these in a little bit more detail up there, but both have a nice saturated sharp image with a good level of dynamic range, although I did find the iPhone 12 to have just slightly more. And while on both, the ultra-wide lens does look a little bit distorted around the edges, which hasn't been fixed on the iPhone 12 unfortunately, both phones do take fantastic photos. To be honest, I did find that I got a little bit more versatility as well as had a little bit more fun with the iPhone 11 Pro due to that telephoto angle, but if you're not into that, chances are the iPhone 12 will give you a slight edge in terms of performance. In terms of portrait mode, I did find the iPhone 12 to be a little bit better, with it getting stuck on the edges slightly less frequently. However, I still prefer the iPhone 11 Pro in this regard, due to it not only being able to use the portrait mode on the wide-angle lens, but also on the telephoto lens, which is a nice addition. In terms of night mode, both perform pretty well. However, I do still think the iPhone 12 is slightly better in this regard, due to it working on all angles, and while I do think the iPhone 11 Pro's telephoto night mode does work better than the ultra-wide night mode, in general, I do prefer the colors from the iPhone 12, and that slightly faster aperture on the wide angle does mean that the iPhone 12 will be slightly better for night mode photography. Both take nice selfies, however, once again, you do get the night mode on the iPhone 12 selfies, and overall, I do slightly prefer the colors from the iPhone 12. Alright, so this is all well and good, but how's the video performance? Both phones shoot in 4K and up to 60 FPS, which is nice to see. The iPhone 11 Pro features extended dynamic range, recording in up to 60 FPS, whereas the iPhone 12 actually features Dolby HDR in 4K at up to 30 FPS, which is awesome. Both do look really good in this regard. However, I do generally prefer the video look of the iPhone 12. I found colors to be more consistent, and most of the time dynamic range is slightly better. In terms of slow motion, both do shoot in 1080p at up to 240 FPS, and while the 1080p 120 FPS does look better on both, it is nice to have that ultra slow motion, and to be honest, I do struggle to tell the two apart. In terms of selfie video, it's more of the same. Both shoot in 4K at up to 60 FPS. However, I'm pretty sure you do lose that extended dynamic range over 30 FPS on the iPhone 11 Pro. And again, I do generally prefer the colors out of the iPhone 12. Overall, in terms of the camera, as I said before, which one will be better for you really depends on your photo style. Up next, we're going to be talking about probably the most important part of the modern smartphone experience: OS and app performance. The iPhone 11 Pro was released with iOS 13, whereas the iPhone 12 was released with iOS 14. Now, what this means is essentially the iPhone 12 is likely to get one more year of support than the iPhone 11 Pro. Typically, however, this is about 5 years, so neither phone is going anywhere anytime soon, which is nice to know if you want to pick up one of these phones in 2021. However, how's the actual performance? Well, in terms of iOS performance, both are pretty much as good as you can get. Scrolling through the OS, opening up stock apps, and performing secondary interactions are all seamless. And honestly, the only way I think this could get smoother is with a higher refresh rate screen. Now, chances are the iPhone 12 will stay good slightly longer thanks to that A14 processor and just in general newer release. But as for now, both are fantastic. In terms of third-party apps and more intensive performance, both are great in this regard too. I found that streaming 4K video on these devices is excellent. However, when 5G gets rolled out further, chances are the iPhone 12 will slightly excel more due to the faster speeds, but as for now, they're pretty much the same. In terms of gaming performance, it's a similar story here. Both are pretty much as good as you can get at the moment. Again though, with the exception of a higher refresh rate screen. And again though, in future, with the release of 5G, chances are online games will be slightly better with the iPhone 12, but for the foreseeable future, at least where I live, both phones do perform great. In terms of a winner though, I do have to give this round to the iPhone 12. I think honestly purely because of the future-proofing. I mean, both perform great. Up next, we're going to be talking about another hardware element, specifically the speakers. The iPhone 11 series actually added a new technology to the speakers dubbed spatial audio playback, and on top of the already implemented stereo technology from the iPhone 7, both phones can get impressively loud and sound much fuller than something like an iPhone XS. What this means is essentially I don't bother plugging in headphones anymore if I'm just at home and want to casually consume some media. In terms of things like listening to music or watching videos, the speakers on both of these phones are totally fine. And while they're certainly not going to be winning any quality awards anytime soon, for casual listening, both are pretty excellent. Finally, we're going to be talking about the battery life. In terms of specs, the iPhone 11 Pro features a battery with a capacity of 3046 mAh, whereas the iPhone 12 features a 2815 mAh battery, which is noticeably smaller, at least on paper. Now, there are benefits to the iPhone 12 in terms of battery life. For example, it can be charged with the new MagSafe technology, but in terms of raw performance, throughout my time using both of these phones, the iPhone 11 Pro does have noticeably better battery life. Okay, so all things considered, which of these two phones should you buy in 2021? Well, being totally honest and putting my own personal preferences aside, the iPhone 12 does seem to be better for most people. However, as someone who doesn't use MagSafe, prefers the smaller screen, and actually really likes having all three cameras, I personally do still prefer the iPhone 11 Pro. As I've said in the past, I don't believe there is one definitive best phone ever, especially not out of these two. Both are going to be fantastic for 2021, regardless of which one you pick. And hopefully this video has helped make your decision a little bit easier. Alright guys, so that's it for today. I'm sorry about my voice in this video. It has been progressively going throughout the day. For today's comment question, which of these two phones do you prefer? Feel free to let me know. I always like reading your comments. As for now though, as always, thank you for watching. Remember to like the video if you want to see more content like this, and smash that subscribe button. I'm done for now, and I will see you guys in the next one.